Hi, everybody. We're going to give folks just a moment to get joined up, make sure that your technology is working, find out where that unmute button and your camera button are so that you can come on camera and engage with us today. We always appreciate your time and we really enjoy your presence with us. So I am a stickler for time. I see that it is straight up top of the hour, so thank you for joining us today. I am Terry Bearden. I'm Project Director for Organizational Capacity Building here at the National Community Action Partnership. Thank you for joining us for our next installment in what we call the Peer Data Webinar Series. This is an opportunity for us to learn from experts in our network about what is working at their organizations in terms of moving our data culture, our data processes forward, and our data skills forward. Today, we are lucky to have someone from Wayne Metro with us, and I will turn things over to him after we ground ourselves in the promise of community action on the next slide. The promise of community action. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. And we invite you to really lean into the promise, especially during the challenging times in our network right now. Again, we greatly appreciate your dedication to our communities, to our nation, and the vital work that you do will continue. So I am going to, with no further ado, let you know, first of all, please pop your name, agency, and state in the chat. And we will make the recording and slides available to everyone after the webinar. Give us a day or so to get those ready for you. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Sadiq Mohammed from Wayne Metro. Sadiq?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sadiq Mohammed, and I am the Director of Data Strategy at Wayne Metro, located in Detroit, Michigan. I am genuinely thrilled to be here with you all. I know how much passion and effort all of us pour into our communities every day. All right, I just need to manage my slides here. And so today we're going to talk about something really crucial and important to all of us. I know the slides says automation or automating, but truly in its essence, the topic of today is time. Specifically, how can we stop wasting time on mundane tasks that time is very important to us, and how can we start reinvesting it back into our mission, essentially. And so just quickly in the chat, who feels like they spent more time battling spreadsheets, repetitive tasks this week instead of necessarily or actually helping a client? If you could just raise your hand or just type in me too, maybe in the chat or something. All right, I'm trying to pull the chat. There. And so it's essentially, yeah, we're not here. I'm not necessarily here to talk about fancy tech. I am here to talk about automating strategy to maximize our impact, improve accuracy in what we do, and essentially at the core of it, honor the time of our staff and the time of our clients. And so to start it off, I want you all to meet Maria. She's one of our caseworkers. But look at her workload, look at her face. She's spending hours every week doing what we call data gymnastics, just copying the same information from one place to another, from one system to another. She's constantly chasing contractors, always in endless emails, just chasing information, always responding to things regarding status updates. So this isn't necessarily case management right here. And so that's the core of what we're talking about today. And so the question then is, why automate? And that is the win here for us. With automation, we get time, accuracy, and greater impact. Automation is a shift from transactional work to relational work. It's a win for everyone in the agency. For compliance, it means audit-ready data without having to scramble midway. For program staff, it's a solution for burnout. For our executive directors and leadership, it means essentially maximizing resources and achieving greater outcomes for our communities. And so this is the treadmill for all of us at the moment. This loop that really consumes our energy. I'm sure it has consumed my energy. There's intake, and then data entry, and then reporting, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. And so how many of us feel like we're always hitting this repeat button? How many of us felt like we hit the repeat button multiple times this week? And this is the pain essentially that we're looking to address. And so we need a framework to decide where to break the cycle. You don't necessarily want to automate messy, broken processes. And so we need to be very methodical in ways we address automation and going about resolving this issue. And by the way, as I'm going through this as well, I would like this to be more of a conversation. So I'm open. I know that's 44 people, relatively a smaller session. So feel free to unmute if you feel like you have a question or anything to add. Also leverage the chat if you have specific questions as I go on as well. All right. So the simplest way to start when thinking about automation is to think about the groundwork. If a task is simple, repetitive, and it's high volume, I would say that goes on the top of our pyramid. Automate first. Think about the task of, for example, downloading specific reports that are very similar in its structure, and you do it once a week, maybe once a day, once a month. For us, that is the perfect case to start automating first. And then crucially, we should not automate the things that require human interaction. For example, certain things that require empathy, judgment. We do not want to automate complex needs assessment or counseling sessions and certain stuff like that. And so we need to, sometimes we over automate, and you see a lot of corporate world automate a lot of things that should not be automated. And as a result, it becomes instead of connecting things together, essentially it does the opposite. There's a lot of disconnect, and clients at the end of the day feel basically not prioritized in the process. And so I want to share some of the tools that are out there. The most important rule when we're thinking about tools is to make sure we're starting where we at, in the sense of what are the resources that are currently available to me. We don't need a massive IT budget to start. Everyone have access to Excel sheets, to computers. Some of us might have access to Microsoft and Power Automate. Some of us have access to an IT team or a data team. Here at Wayne Metro, we're privileged in the sense that we have a data team that focuses on data and maintaining data and building automations and so on and so forth. And so these are some of the tools that I wanted to talk about and share some thoughts on. So if I break these systems or tools into categories, I'll break it into two. One, what I would call point and click. So these are like fantastic tools like Power Automate. We're also using a solution called Tray.io, or platform called Tray.io. These are usually visual flowchart interfaces. It's like drawing a pipeline. where you literally point and click to say, if this happens, then do this. And it requires little to no coding, essentially. And so that is what point and click is. In level 2, what I would say scripts or low code. So this is where your data team, IT team could chime. This is tools like Google Apps Script. So where it would allow you to do simple code to automate certain things. And I'll get into some of the examples that we've done there as well. There's also something called cron jobs. And that's also falls under scripting, and it's a fancy name essentially for like my digital alarm clock, where essentially it schedules a particular script to run for you, for example, at 6 a.m. every morning, and so on and so forth. Those are the 2 categories. And then everything else, everything that you see in front of you either falls into those two categories. We talked about point and click, Power Automate, Tray.io. Those are solutions. RPA stands for robotic processing automations. What that is, if there's particular code that you could do through programming language, Python, as well as other programming languages, what it would simply mimic exactly your cursor, right? So every day I click on this button, and then I click on this button, and then I click on this button, and that's the tasks that I do. And RPA, what it does, it matches exactly your clicks. And so what you do is provide it with a computer or a virtual space, and it simply does the clicks that you provided it with. We talked about scripts, right? Scripts could be in Python, Google. If you use Google Spreadsheets, they have a built-in script on the backend called AppScript. And so think about, for example, Google Forms. If you were to create a Google form and it's connected to a Google Sheet, your trigger is that every entry that you receive, you can run that script. And what you could do a whole lot of things into that script, where you can say, hey, I would like to send a confirmation email. I would like to start a particular process. And so that falls under app scripts, right? Through Google, Microsoft, all these tools out there, they have their own versions of their app scripts. API, it's also another popular tool out there. A lot of web developers are using it. A lot of folks are also embedding it into the scripts that they're using as well. And then nowadays, if you want to get a little more fancy, there are tools out there that are called AI agents. AI agents are essentially smart tools that don't necessarily just do exactly what you told it to do. It would also own the process in its essence. And it would be able to modify and adjust things as things change. Because with coding, RPA, point and click, it follows exactly the process that you built out. So if anything changes to it, it breaks the entire process. Whereas AI agents has a little more flexibility in adjusting to changes because it understands the mission and the purpose of the process, and it's less focused on the step-by-step guide. And so I'm gonna like apologize ahead of time. We won't have. We'll see if we have time at the end of this at the end of the session to do a quick demo into one of the tools. But if we don't, I apologize, and I spoke to Terry. We can do another session where we do a deep dive into one of the tools if needed. All right. And so to me, this is the overall recipe for automations. Before we build the automation process, we need to come up with a plan, essentially, starting by mapping our current process and defining the specific measurable goals. What is it exactly that I'm trying to do? For example, on a daily basis, I go onto this website and I download this file. I need to connect it to a Power BI. if you're doing that on a daily basis, more likely that, hey, that is your goal. And so you need to define exactly your process on paper before you go ahead and just build an automation. The other piece that you need to think about is, okay, now that I've identified a process that I would like to automate, what is the trigger? Every automation needs a trigger. For example, if you're a caseworker currently copies and pastes every day from one system to another, anytime a form is submitted, then your trigger is that your form submission, that's your trigger. The automation in that case would replace the copy and paste. In other cases, the trigger doesn't necessarily have to be an action. It could be a times trigger, where at a particular time or a particular cadence, every 5 minutes, every hour, every minute, run a particular script or start the automation. So that is another trigger. Another trigger could be an email. If you receive an email from a specific email address, that could be a trigger. For example, we deal with contractors. And so, for example, I want any time that I receive a document from a contractor via email to go through a certain process. That is a trigger. Another trigger is what we are calling webhooks. Now, certain tools that we're using, they have this alert system built in where anytime a new file is added or a new record is added or updated, it would send an alert message to this link. And essentially, webhook is you have a copy of this link and you would receive the alert directly because you have access to the alert system. So for a lot of people, that is the trigger that they're using. And there's a bunch of other triggers that folks have creatively came up with. But essentially, automation requires trigger, whatever trigger that is. And then I guess think about your daily work right now. As I'm speaking, going through the process. Like, what is one repetitive task that you feel like it might be a good candidate for this recipe? I'd like this to be a little more interactive. So if anyone have any thoughts or ideas, feel free to unmute and maybe share an idea that comes to mind right now as we're speaking about this process. Julia, screening people for eligibility. That's an important one. And that's a pain point for a lot of us because oftentimes we have an open application, everyone is applying, but then if you're able to screen people as you're applying, you can tell them, hey, unfortunately, you're not eligible for this app, for this service because X, Y, and Z. And it saves time on your end at the end of the day. Entering people's demographics, scheduling appointments, all of these items are things that essentially could be automated 100%. Any other thoughts? All right. So I do want to go over specific case scenarios that we've gone through at Wayne Metro. So we have our weatherization program, and we work directly with multiple contractors to repair homes. And so one of the key pain areas is that how could we share documents with our contractors and receive documents back? We've used emails where we're emailing people their documents, pictures of our clients' homes. There are a lot of, if you're in the state of Michigan, you know the process is very rigorous. There's a bunch of steps, a bunch of templates that need to be filled out, specific process to map. And so in the past, what we've done is we had a Google Sheet, a Google Drive for folks, and our staff would manually add the pictures. Once a contractor sends over a document, they'll need to notify us or email us. And it was very heavy, and right, so you're thinking about hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of cases that we need to actively monitor. And the weatherization program, it's not like a one-time thing, right? It takes a couple months, if not years, to get through a client, essentially, because that's how long it takes to repair a home. So what we've done is, unfortunately, the system that we're using or mandated by the state is not smart enough to allow us to do some of the stuff that we're doing. So we introduced SharePoint list, where we created a case for every client in SharePoint. And we added buttons to the list. And that button depends on the phase that the client is in, right? For example, assigned to a contractor. So if we assigned it to a contractor, what we built on the backend through Power Automate is a trigger that says, if this button is clicked, do the following: create a folder in SharePoint for the client, copy the details of that folder and add it to SharePoint, and then go ahead and pull these templates that we have for all of our clients, fill it out automatically with the information that was initially provided, send it over to, create a contractor subfolder, send it over to email it to the contractor. And that was one side of the automation. The other piece is we created a handling folder for our clients, for our contractors, apologies. And so anytime a contractor adds a new file to their contractor folder per client, we receive a notification email, because that is the trigger for us. We created a trigger that if a new file is added, trigger X, Y, and Z. And then over time, so we started very small, we tested it out, and over time we kept modifying the process. And that is the key for us. We started very small, and then as we have proved that the automation that we initially put together is active and it's working well, we kept modifying it and adding additional features. And so that saved us hours and hours a week, from chasing documents, chasing contractors, figuring out the status, and we mapped it out originally to the original system. And it just improved the process overall. Now, instead of having a backlog of documents to chase, we're able to get through processing clients a lot faster. And as a result, families got their homes repaired faster and got serviced quicker in the process. Just out of curiosity, how many folks have a similar process for weatherization, particularly the ones in the state in Michigan? I'm not sure how many people we have here from Michigan, but I'm sure that's a pain point for a lot of us, especially those who are using Empower. That's a state mandated system for the state of Michigan currently. Yes, I thought about it. I wanted to do a step-by-step demo, but then I'm sure that's going to take the entire hour again. So maybe you can schedule something else for another time. All right. So that is one case study, or one scenario that we were able to implement automation on our end. Another scenario is with our dashboards. I'm sure no one is perfect, and Wayne Metro is not perfect. We're amongst the different community action agencies that have over 20 different platforms. And one of the challenges that we have is essentially how could we consolidate all of our data together? How could we build dashboards for our leadership that essentially tells us how many unique clients have we served entirely over all of our programs? So that is a challenge that all of us have. One of the specific case scenarios, we were looking at a particular system that had reports that were relevant to our senior leadership. And so before, our staff were manually downloading reports from the system. And then the dashboards, it would take some time for us to update. They built it using Excel. And so, every time you download the report, sometimes something would change, something would break. And so what we did is we took a step back and we contacted the system. And we're like, okay, for example, in our case, in Power, you do not have access or you don't provide access to automation, but directly within your system. Could we coordinate something behind, on the back end? We will receive the files, maybe through a secured file, SFTP, on a particular basis. So they're like, okay, we'd be able to do that. So now we receive files directly on the back end to a secure file. Now what we created a trigger, is that anytime that we receive a file, it triggers an automation. So that is our trigger. And our trigger basically it goes in, grabs the file, and it takes it, adds it to SharePoint. And then from there, we were able to have an automation, a parallel automation using Power BI, where Power BI every 2-3 hours would go into that same SharePoint location, grabs those files, and display them in whatever dashboards that we had put together. So with that entire process where 2-3 staff would actively work on downloading the different reports, making sure they're consolidating and connecting all the reports together and building the dashboards on a daily, weekly basis, the entire process became very much hands-free. Not only that, we were able to build better reporting mechanism for our leadership due to tools. Again, I know I'm throwing different tools out there that might be essentially that come in with fee, and I recognize that not all the agencies are able to afford such tools, but I can promise you that for every fancy tool out there that has a fee, there's an open source alternative. And so I recommend and push everybody to search. Now everyone have access to some sort of AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. You can always ask for an alternative. Then there's always an alternative, but it does take some time to build that knowledge and go over that initial learning curve to get through it. All right, I'm looking at you, Terry. Is there any questions that I skipped in the chat?
Well, there's, I guess, more of a comment, Sadiq. We do all of this into multiple client services management systems that are required by different funding sources. So looking for an API that connects and reduces staff time entering duplicate information. Any comments on that? Any insight, wisdom, magic tricks?
Oops,
and then a comment from that process looks amazing. And Julia commenting, make sure you check your security settings to ensure open source is in keeping with your security settings.
Yes. I know the comment about doing integration to multiple systems is an important one. And I think that's how all of us are starting. You can't really build one integration to 5 different systems. But strategically for the different teams out there, what we need to do is how can we maybe potentially do what we're calling a client matching process in the interim, where if you were to have a data warehouse and the automation, instead of connecting directly to each platform, is that you dump data on a cadenced basis into the data warehouse. You do what we're calling entity resolution, where it matches different clients from the different systems and it creates a unique ID for that client across all systems. And then from there, you could build all kinds of integrations now to that one master data list. And you can always build reports back into the systems. I know, very high level, easy said, very complicated to do. But if we do have data strategies to implement for our agencies, definitely with time and phases, it's very possible. Yes, 100%. And then yes, again, the under sort of the umbrella for everything that I'm saying is obviously security first, security first, security first. Look into your security policy, make sure everything is being transferred very securely. You're not leaking information. If you're using for example, an AI agent for example, or an AI tool to automate some things that you're doing, make sure you're thinking about where is the data being stored. Is it local data? Are you storing it in the cloud? Um, Reviewing the cloud structure and policies and making sure it follows your internal policies as well. 100%.
Sadiq, one question that has actually gotten a vote up too now. Would you be able to share a sample of your data strategy for your agency?
I can send you a follow-up.
That would be great. We will include that with resources. All right, thank you.
Of course. All right. I feel like we do have some time to, does anyone want to mute and maybe share a case scenario real quick of a process that either they've automated already or now thinking to automate? If not, it's completely fine. All right, we'll move on. So I do want to go over lessons learned, and I have to be honest, not every automation that we built for Way Metro has been a home run. But the biggest lesson throughout all of this is that the process of exploring automations has forced us to map better processes, have allowed us to challenge the way we're thinking about things. Because sometimes over the years, we've been, due to the limitations of the systems, we have reversed our thought process to think about ways to basically adjust our process for the system limitations. But when you're thinking about the possibilities out there and engaging with automation tools, it unlocks your paradigm about ways to automate certain things, and then it puts us back to what we're originally doing, which is very much client centric, and you're not forcing the client to go through these system hoops that are just put in place. And then like failures are necessary at the end of the day. They are the building blocks for future success. But the key thing here is that always start small, test, refine, and then scale up. And then when building automations, always thinking about scaling up in mind, because trying to reverse engineer a process to re-automate it again could be very challenging. So when you're building things, build it with automations in mind, because eventually everyone scales up, at least hopefully. And then at the core of all of this, is it's not about the technology. Again, it's about the mission, and technology allows us, or automation allows us to skip the hoops and the limitations of technology at its core, and to get us back to the mission. I do want to talk about slightly the checklist that I quickly put together for what we're calling a starter kit, maybe for automation. It starts off by mapping the process again. What is my current process? What are the pain points that I have? And then defining the goal. Now, these pain points, what is it that I would like to get to, essentially? And spotting repetitive steps. And those are the things that you would like to bake into the automation. Now, having done the discovery, now you can think about the tools. Again, we talked about, think about what's available to you first. Now, if you do have resources, you have time, You can think about maybe other tools that could be slightly easier, but what are the current tools that we have? Everyone have access to a Python script. Not everyone have access to a programmer. Maybe taking some time and learning quickly programming, and obviously now with AI that expedites the process. But if not, everyone have, for the most part, access to hopefully Google and Google spreadsheets. You could do a whole lot of automations using Google spreadsheets. If not, you could probably have access to Power Automate. Power Automate is one of, I guess, redundant here, but like one of the most powerful tools out there right now that are accessible to all of us, especially those who are using the Microsoft Word, Outlook, Excel, and so on and so forth. So do not sleep on Power Automate. Once you've identified the tool, now let's say you have 10 systems that you would like to automate, or 10 steps that you'd like to automate. Start with one, go through the proof of concept, make sure it's working properly, test it thoroughly, and then keep adding as you're going through it. And then talked about testing and refining is very important. This last step number 7, is very important as well. Build error handling, right? Let's say you built a process. When you're automating, if something fails and you're somewhere else, you won't know unless you have some sort of error handling mechanism, right? For example, you can say, hey, if this process failed, make sure you send me an email. If this process failed, go ahead and text me. If this process failed, go ahead and follow this alternative process. I cannot emphasize how important this is when you're building automations. And now I want to go back to our friend here, Maria. You can see now Maria is happy. But then again, it's not about technology, it's about our people. There's our staff, our clients. We don't want our staff to burn out. We don't want our families to wait just because of a system. And overall, having a smoother process gives you stronger outcomes for the community at its essence. And now I do want to make sure we're all engaging. So as you're thinking about all the tools, everything that we've covered, what is maybe one process that you will commit to, not necessarily automate, but at least exploring potential of automating when you're going back? And I do, if possible, if people could be engaged, I think that'd be really good to hear. Because at the end of the day, sometimes when I started talking about automation, I remember I used to be very shy. Anytime when I go to like these conferences and whatnot, I felt like that's just a Wayne Metro issue. And then as soon as I opened my mouth, everyone's like, oh, I'm going through the same thing. Oh, maybe I've done this, you want to explore this. And you start feeling comfort knowing that everyone is attempting to resolve the same issue across the board. And so so feel free to unmute, share some ideas, share some thoughts, and anything you have in mind. And that's my last slide for today.
Sadiq, I see that we do have a couple of folks putting comments and questions in the chat. Can you see those okay?
Yes, I just opened the chat. Now I'm going to skim through it. Julia says, we're working to automate the utility bill assistance program, LIHEAP, and using the AI agent to screen for eligibility over the phone. Julia, could you share what AI tool that or AI agent that you're using? I think it'd be nice for everyone to go back and explore on their end.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we're working with a company called, I'm in Walla Walla, Washington, in Southeast Washington State, and we're working with a company called Fortel, and they have piloted with another agency here in Washington State and we're using their demo. So we have an AI agent starting to screen calls for energy assistance.
Cool.
Let me know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're doing that. That started this week because our energy assistance program, like main enrollment time starts next week. And we went from a staff of 3 to a staff of 1 over the summer. So we're looking at alternates, and then also it does all these steps like that are super repetitive, telling people what documents they need, making an appointment. And then we still need a human to check the documents and then to process some of the information. That another step we're working on, which is why I asked about APIs, is working with Fortel and our client management system. We don't have this ready yet, but we're looking to hopefully have it ready in the next month or so, at least an initial draft of an API that will then connect our AI screening agent to be able to directly input client information into our client service manager, CAP 60. And we're starting with this one department, starting that small scale, and then trying hopefully be able to deploy it to others, particularly like our eviction prevention. Again, one of our team members calls 300 people a month, and only 10 of them typically receive rental assistance. So the burnout of the staff is really high. Having to tell 290 people they don't qualify and give them that phone eligibility screening. So we're always trying to balance what needs a human relationship and what can use a robot relationship, and being really mindful of that. And I'm just answering Lynn's question. This for the LIHEAP, I don't know off the top of my head if it's HIPAA compliant. We're using it for utility assistance, so it doesn't need to be. But I know it's in a secured system. We're really careful about that, and we have a separate data security system to make sure everything's protected through the transfer process of information from the AI agent, and then it comes to us, and then it's deleted from the other source.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing. You should have presented instead of me.
No, I'm so new at this. Like, this is one of those other duties as assigned parts of my job that I'm learning on the fly. And then, so I don't know, and I'd love if anybody has ideas. It's like we're working right now to figure out how we rapidly deploy food support for our community members who are facing no WIC and SNAP benefits starting next week. So we won't have an AI agent up and ready, but we're using some of these same ideas, like the same process you laid out is super helpful for my meeting later today, because we're trying to come up with a process for how we support up to 4,000 residents who receive food and SNAP benefits in our region with some alternate form of support, at least temporarily. So we're looking at what automatic ways can we qualify and distribute money for people to continue to go to grocery stores and get their basic needs met. And how do we do that, like, in 6 days? So we'll be using a lot of technology, a lot of ingenuity.
Yeah.
And I'll look up the name for that. You mean the company?
And as you look that up, I think Maribeth asked about good resources. There's a bunch of resources out there. Let's say YouTube is a good resource.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, whatever, those are all good resources. But I would say the biggest resource, or the biggest thing that have pushed us internally, is to just jump in and do it. Find a tool, Power Automate, that you have access to, and say, I'm gonna spend some time learning through this. And start with an idea, start with something that you would like to resolve, and you'll be surprised the kind of quick times that it would take you to adopt, because a lot of it, you know exactly what you want to automate. just a matter of like the tools. And they've built up the tools to be super intuitive, just to essentially follow exactly your process and how you think to build it up. And so I would say just jump in and dive in. That's honestly my advice for a lot of people. But yeah, AI, Power Automate, YouTube. For some of us with a budget, maybe Udemy, Coursera, those are all have good classes, courses that folks could go in and learn.
Katie's comment about automated internal process for finance and HR documentation. Then I saw a comment from Justin. I'm trying to find it now. About don't forget a debrief step in your process. Do you see that one? Because it's over my head.
Yes, no, 100%. So right after, you always need, right? I should have embedded that into step number 6. Always debrief, test, refine, make sure you're on the right track essentially, and that your team is following. 100%. Appreciate your note, Justin. Trying to skim through the comments. Alexis, he said there's a platform. Is it Cold Forward? I'm not too familiar with that platform, but it does. If it does integrate.
Forward.
Okay. I'll look into it. I'm not too familiar with it, but yeah, there's gazillion platforms out there, and they're all competing right now, especially with AI. Everyone is throwing AI. Not everyone that uses the word AI essentially is I guess a particular note to note right now. There's a scary statistic that almost 95 or 96% of all the new AI startups essentially fail. And you are still at the start of this AI movement. You don't know exactly who are the winners, who are going to be essentially for the long term. So you have to be very careful with choosing the AI tools out there. Make sure it's the foundation is right. It has a sustainable model at its core. Thank you for sharing the link. I'll definitely take a look into it. All right.
Right, we have a couple more minutes together. Anybody want to come off mute or put anything else in the chat for us to discuss while we have Sadiq here with us? Raise your hand. Put it in the chat. All right.
Well, for those of us who have
Yes, please.
many databases, you mentioned that perhaps a more better first step would be instead to look for more of a data warehouse to merge our clients together. So that way we could begin to maybe go forth into these automated processes. Where would you start with a data warehouse? What would you recommend in that area?
Yeah. So I would say it depends on the volume of data you have. There are different options, and also the resources that you have. If you have a solid budget and a good IT or data team, you could probably maybe do a SQL database, AWS, like one of these cloud structures. You can even use essentially like a Google Sheet for your database, if depending on the data. But if you do have a larger data set, you might want to go with something a little more robust. And your question is at its essence is an entirely like a 1-hour presentation about data warehouse and entity resolution and connecting all of this together. But I would say there are Airtable is another quick point and click database or low code I've used something called Caspio in the past, and we're actually still using Caspio. It's really good. Now, so there's a lot of factors that dictate the database that you would want to nominate and select based on your current status. Sorry, I gave you like a non-answer, but you're on the right track just thinking about it, so we're good.
It may be similar, Sadiq, to what Mary Beth and I will say as we're talking to folks about scorecards and that type of thing. I mean, you just really need to start somewhere. Is that fair to say just go ahead and pick one and start, and you'll kind of figure it out through trial and error whether it meets your needs or not? Is that fair?
I would say 100%, because once you start, you're gonna see, oh, there's another challenge, and you're gonna have to go and explore the other challenge, and so on and so forth. But definitely, what expedites the process are spaces like this where people come together and share knowledge. And so we're hoping maybe in the future, I plan to join these more frequently on a personal note. So but any effort that we could do to streamline things for community action agencies and share knowledge, I think would be super helpful.
And I see Justin has added a comment about SharePoint and Automate, as well as Katie asked about any resources for how Power Automate works. So I think, is that like for tutorials, Katie? Is that what we're trying to find? Oh, she may have left. Okay. All right. Well, I think perhaps we are nearing our time being over today. Thank you, Sadiq, for sharing that last slide. Yeah, Katie says, yes, more of the capability. So any recommendations as far as that goes, Sadiq?
Yeah, I see Justin shared a few things, but Power Automate, I guess I'm sure there's a bunch of things on YouTube that are just very accessible. But I would say, particularly Power Automate, and I'm sure I see Justin has been using, and a few other folks have been using it. The moment that you start interacting with it, you would sense how easy it is. Yes, in the beginning, it could be this automation thing that could be a little scary sounding, but once you interact and start small, maybe say, hey, my first project is I want to go into a particular folder and, pull an Excel sheet. Don't even do anything with it. That's your first project. That second project is that, take this spreadsheet and then just move it from folder A to folder B. And then these small steps, once you're in the pattern of like doing a bunch of these small steps, then you start thinking as in sort of an automation engineer per se, and then you can think about the possibilities. But I know I could watch a gazillion videos, and the moment I start the project, I feel stuck, and so just have to push through that feeling of being stuck and spend some more time. You'll get there.
All right, thank you, Sadiq. I echo Julia's comment about really appreciating your insights. Again, we will share the recording and the slides. We are going to continue our peer data webinar series in 2026. We have one that we will share registration information for January shortly. Please take just a couple of minutes and complete an evaluation for us, and be sure to bring ideas for future webinars with you when you complete that evaluation. We actually do pay a lot of attention to your feedback there. So with that, we will say thank you for your time and thank you for joining us, and we hope you will join us for future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.